I am Akash Abdullah and watching my show. Climate change is a poster child of a global diplomacy of today. In fact, it can easily be regarded as the most complex global policy problem. This complexity in understanding the political economy of climate change is reflected in its temper. It's a stock rather than a flow pollution problem. Historical emission from the industrial countries are mixing with today's rapidly growing emission from the developing countries. The impact will manifest themselves fully in decades to come, and future generations are likely to suffer the most. Yet, the harsh reality is a lot of the scientists already attribute the trend of the increase in the magnitudes, frequency, 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 and severity of the climate disasters of the recent year to the climate change. The main creator of the problem are rich industrial countries. There is a world are divided into the developed and the developing nation, the industrial and the underdeveloping industrial nation, which are likely to suffer less, while the poor with the least contribution to the problem will suffer the most. Today, the topic of our discussion is the climate change and the Glasgow Conference 2021 and the implementation of the different countries to how to eradicate the climate change and how the climate change affect our international relation with the different states and the human rights as well. Today, the guests who are give the answer about these questions and talk about this topic, Charlie from California. Thank you very much, Charlie, for joining us.
Thank you so much, Wakash, for inviting me. It's a great
Dr.
pleasure.
Usman Shahid from Pakistan. Thank you, Dr. Usman, for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Yuan, for joining us from your side.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Charlie, how can you explain it? How much is planet is warming up in nowadays? When we see the climate change are being changed, the industrial revolution has become nowadays. So how can you say this? How much the planet is warming up?
So actually what we see right now is that this topic is much more complex than we saw before. And what we were able to present at the Global Crisis Time for the Truth conference, we actually got scientists from different spheres of studying on one platform. And by introducing their researches from the geologists, for example, we found out that the German and Russian scientists in Greenland found out that the glaciers are melting not only from the top, but mostly from the bottom up. And it was a confusing study. Why is it happening like that? And then they found out that there is a geothermal activity that is going from underneath. So we see that the Earth core is heating up and the magma, the lava flows becomes hotter, getting closer to the Earth crust and melting the glaciers from the bottom up. And then the same thing is happening in the Antarctica, because all of a sudden we find out that the melting of Antarctic ice is only happening on the western side, which is surprisingly one of the most active geothermal regions of the world, with a lot of more than 140 underwater volcanoes. And we see that the ice is melting uneven, only on the side where there are underwater volcanoes. So we see that something happening underneath our core, not only on the top. But this topic is not popular in the media. We don't hear about it a lot. And why is that? It's for economical reasons, because as you said, developed countries are using climate change as an economical factor to slow down the development of countries of so-called second and third world, and trying to use it as an economical factor. When we see how much serious the problem is getting year by year, we don't see these researches are being published or given enough attention. And that is really a threat to us as a humanity, because we don't understand the processes of what is actually going inside of our planet. We are risking as a humanity to see a much bigger consequences of such an action.
Okay, Dr. Usman Shahid, one of the best pointers raised by the Charlie right now. He said that the developing nation are used the climate change against the underdeveloped situations. The human rights also be affected over there. How can you say this? How can you see this developing procedure by the developing states?
I think the onus is on the north side, not the developing states, because we have not been producing and emitting that much carbon emissions. But what we have witnessed in Scotland conference, I think I was skimming through the main takeaways of that conference. So I believe we don't have much political mileage to decide, where the narrative goes. So I believe developing countries have been suffering. Like in Pakistan, we for past 5 or 6 years, we have been in the list of most affected countries, despite of the matter that we are not producing not even 1% of carbon emission. We're not emitting any carbon as we don't have industry, and unfortunately, we have a poor environmental governance model, and a country like China has been exploiting us while outsourcing her pollution to definitely to the countries across the region. So I personally believe, and as far as Africa region is concerned, they have been producing just 3% of the carbon emission. Their footprint is just 3%, but they have been, you know, they have been managing the drastic impact of climate change. So I think our side, the south side, is not to blame. The incumbent is on western side because they have already developed, and now they are just using this mantra uh, to just counter the development in our side developing countries, while their manufacturing units have been working here and producing here. So I don't believe uh, we should blame ourselves at this stage. And I'd like to mention here that at a legislative level, if we talk about the human rights instruments, UN have made so far, the climate change is not legally bound to the Universal Human Rights Treaty. So I think they have got the more political mileage than the poor countries who have been suffering, because it's like we are in a hard and a rock place. Either way, we are stuck. So we are in the limbo. So either way, you know, situation is quite fluid. Either side, if we go that side, if we don't go for development, and this thing will create a new chaos in our countries. And if we go for the environmental side, it's not possible to just abide by the international treaties and laws. And of course, it's not binding. You know well that Donald Trump literally uh, just left the climate accord. And uh, and again, if we talk about the Scotland meeting, I just came to know that India got the second lease of carbon, and they're still going for coal energy. So I personally believe a situation is quite at an inflection point, and in that quandary, I believe West has got more to do for that matter, and I hope sanity will prevail after Joe Biden has assumed power in Washington, and he has always been a great adherent and advocate of climate change. So, uh, fingers crossed. I hope he will be the voice of the reason, and sanity will prevail on Western end. Yeah.
Okay. Uh, Ivan, I want to know from you that when we talk about the ocean, the industrial wastage, and also with the plastic pollution has been we put it into the ocean in the several years. The oceans and also with the species are living over there, they are being eradicated from the ocean. So how can you say this? The oceans as being polluted. So what are the implementations taken by the different states to clean up the ocean, and how much oceans are being affected in several years?
Hi. Yeah, you just touched. Well, thank you everybody for your opinions. I really support everything you just said, and I would like to add to that as well. But I will answer about the oceans first. Oceans are polluted, and they're getting polluted much at a very high pace, and even as we speak, and all of the programs which we have, ecological or any programs of restoration, recycling, is just a big show, because nothing is really happening. Nobody is cleaning anything up. And basically what rich countries do, they sweep everything clean on their side and then dump it on to poor nations like in Africa and everywhere else in the world, everywhere they can find a free spot. And the ocean is a wonderful place to dump your garbage, because nobody will see, because the sea is vast. They can go very far away from the shore, dump it over there, and nobody is going to complain about it, and nobody is going to see it for a while until it creates huge islands of garbage which swim across. Of course, it will kill those who live there. It will affect fisheries. It will affect ecology big time. By now, it's really got to catastrophic proportions. But unfortunately, people around the world are not ready or not willing, I don't know what, to deal with the actual problem, rather than create a show about how they're dealing with it. The thing is, I used to work for a big recycling company, and I've seen the way it's done. They collect plastic, like you separate garbage in Western countries. They put plastic separately, paper separately, then cans, this, that, and the other. Different trucks will pick up the garbage, but in the end, it will get dumped in the same place. So even though there is a facade of you being recycling, separating the garbage, taking care of nature, it only looks that way, and you pay extra for it, but in the end, the result will be the same. It's all getting up, dumped at the same place. So look at the problem this way. We're saying that we're trying to fight the plastic and the pollution, but we didn't stop for a second producing the pollutants. And if you talk about the CO2, the whole narrative of they're almost making oil and gas illegal these days. That's what they're trying to go for. But if you look into the oil production, gas production, the way they find new places, new sources for it, it didn't stop for a split second. Actually, the search for new sources of oil and production is growing exponentially every day. You can talk anybody in the industry, they will tell you they're not planning on shutting down oil manufacturing. They don't even think about it. It's only growing year after year. So this whole CO2 religion, which is just major power grab of power-hungry people which can't get enough. That's pretty much it.
Okay. Charlie, can you please explain me that a lot of the people are not taking too much seriously the climate changes. Even the many people don't know about anything related to the climate change. Even they know about what is the climate change. Can you please explain it exactly what is the meaning of the climate change and how much is important for us to stop these climate changing possibilities?
Yes, thank you so much. It's actually a very good question. And we were covering it at the Global Crisis Time for the Truth conference from different perspectives, including psychology. So according to psychologists, the climate change threat for most of the people, for their the way the brain works, they don't see it as a actual threat. They see it as something that's distant in the long future and doesn't affect them right now, until something is happening, like flooding in Germany last summer or tornado in Czech Republic. And these kind of things, they happened all of a sudden in a spot where people did not expect and affect them in the most direct way. And we see how much often the tornadoes, volcano eruptions, earthquakes, the magnitude, the places in which they're happening. If someone would tell me 10 years ago that there will be a tornado in Czech Republic, it would sound like a joke, but today it's our reality. And we see that no one is protected from it, that it can happen anywhere. Not the economy level, not the level of development of your country, nothing can protect you from the climate change. And what we see that our legal base is not ready for that at all. When we have a big problem in certain country, of course, the first thing is happening. We need to save people. We need to grant them shelter. We need to take care of the climate refugees because their number is increasing. It's millions of people. According to the statistics, only last year it was 86 million people. And this number is just growing, but our legal base is not ready for that. Our countries do not have laws as to how we treat the problem of climate refugees or the increasing number of them at all. And when we ask our politicians in European Union about it, for example, why don't we have laws as to how different countries take care of the refugees? They say, oh, wow, it's not even on our agenda. And this is the problem, that people themselves, they do not create requests for this kind of solutions on legal level until it affects them directly. And this is the problem. This is where we have to be proactive. This is where we have to create demand for these changes in the legal field, in the unification of people. We have to understand that we are on one planet, everyone, and there is no planet B. We cannot live to another planet. And when something is happening in one country, it affects all the countries. If we don't have laws and regulations as to how do we take care of the refugees, it's going to be a huge problem, much bigger than what we saw in Europe with Syria, with a crisis in Syria, which, by the way, started way before the war and started because of the climate change, started because of the drought. People started migrating because they didn't have food in their regions due to the droughts and water shortages. So it becomes much bigger of a problem than we actually realizing right now. And events like Global Crisis Time for the Truth conference is actually showing the scale of it. Thank you.
Dr. Osman Shah, I think you would like to add something because you are working in a refugees camp also. So Charlie, I'll talk about the refugees. How can you explain it, the refugees and for not giving enough food to their... So you are visiting the refugees camp. Can you please explain the exact situation was already in the refugees camp?
Yeah, the refugees I had been working with, they were from the war-torn countries. But yeah, definitely the climate change phenomena has been uprooting people from their homeland, and their land rights, their social, economic, and cultural rights have been compromised for that matter. And yeah, if we talk about, because I like to talk about Pakistan and the developing countries, especially the South Asia. And I believe that the government now have taken this issue quite seriously following the pandemic, and I hope so. I hope so that government will definitely take human rights-based climate action and just incorporate this, the climate environmental consideration into the domestic legal instrument and do some legislation for that matter. Because if they don't understand and don't protect the environment, then they will be unable to facilitate people to enjoy their human rights without any unnecessary damaged environment. So there is a link. At least as far as South Asia is concerned, the leadership here has considered and admired this very fact that there's a link between a safe and healthy environment and human rights. And now it's been recognized here, and our government has been doing tremendous work for that matter. You people must have heard about the billion tsunami tree and the Roshan Pakistan. It's a domestic level. It's a drive across the whole Pakistan. People have been engaging. People have been sensitized to just leave the plastic. And the universities, our University of Central Punjab, like many other universities, they have been working on the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So I believe, yeah, there is a sense at people's end as well that it's high time. It's a defining decade, and if we don't bend the carbon curve, definitely we'll be in hot waters later. So I think in our given capacity, our governments have been managing, though it's not their job right now, because people don't understand this kind of phenomena. You can easily convince Western people on the north side that it's a big, huge issue. But when it comes to people, poor people, it's a dense populated area where we have been living in. So they are not bothered until they are fed. The basic need here is, food. There are millions of people who are, who are living uh, under the below the poverty line. There's acute poverty here. So people are not ready to buy this, mantra, climate change and environmental governance thing. We need energy. There's a, acute energy crisis here. So we don't consider this thing that coal shouldn't be burned until we need, this electricity due to the power outage. I have talked to many people. They're not concerned. They said it's a Western thing. Now they have developed themselves, and now they're coming after us. And unfortunately, the West for last one, century ago, they had literally plundered our resources and did depredation at worst level. And now we have been suffering through. So who is to blame? So merely they're sorry uh, doesn't work much. So I guess that's the thing. China has been using this thing as a cover to just outsourcing her pollution in their BRA project. And the Pakistan government, they don't have much choice for that matter, and they are ready to invest in coal energy because of China, and people are quite happy and quite okay with it. Because you have been living here, quite well. It's very hard to just convince people when they are just suffering from, their basic needs, their basic rights. So telling people that access to internet is a basic human rights and climate change has become a human rights, I think it won't serve the purpose right now. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Have a big ecological problem. We do have to clean up our planet, but it has nothing to do with the climate change. The things which I'm talking about, I'm talking about cosmic rays coming from outside of our galaxy, even not only our solar system. I'm talking about changes inside the Earth. Our Earth's core is shifting. I'm talking about magma flows. I'm talking about earthquakes and volcano eruptions. All of that has nothing to do with human activity on our planet. It's a cyclical thing which happens every so often. This time it's 12,000 year cycle. As well as, it would be the same as saying that the ice age came because we were using oil or we didn't use oil. It has nothing to do with it. We do have an ecological issue. We do have to face it, but there is much bigger threat in front of us and we have to deal with it. And the best way to do it is look at each other's face and say, you know what, I do care about your life and I want to help you. And the best way for us to survive it all is to gather our resources, whichever we have, whether it's oil, coal, plastic, and whatnot. But we have to put those resources together in order to save our lives. And that's very pressing issue at the moment, and it's developing very fast.
Dr. Usman Shahid, you have done your master's in the human rights. So I would love to ask you this question, that how the climate change affect the human rights and how has the climate change contribute to the human rights and the humanitarian crisis? Because we can see there's a lot of countries that they are eradicating their forests for the development of their for the job market, for the population that be increasing nowadays, because they have a different phenomena that they are working, because they think that they didn't have a job market, they didn't have a different places to migrate for their people. So how can you say this? Because you earlier mentioned that Brazil and the different states as well. So how can you say this, the climate change affect the human rights?
Of course, at every level, climate change has been affecting human rights. As I said earlier, it has posed a greater threat to our basic fundamental rights, which are guaranteed: right to life, right to shelter, right to life, right to shelter, right to live. And it's compromising economic rights, our land rights. People are being uprooted. Uh, if we talk about South Asia, because I could talk about that about this region very much, because I've been living through this pandemic and everything. So I personally believe when the floods hit to these countries, the poor economies where their economic conditions is so dwindling, and they are poor, they have got poor economic indicators. So our economic rights are, usurped in that way, because we haven't been generating, we haven't been emitting, the carbon in the air, but we have been suffering a lot. So I personally believe it has got everything to do with our human rights at every level. And I think that especially the developing states, they make it sure that they have got a rigorous environmental governance model, and they make it sure that the companies, the corporations, they made their economic model with the right based approach whenever they go, and there should be filters, there should be bars, there should be a robust vetting process before they are they're ready to just install a manufacturing unit and just start working there. So as far as the current scenario is concerned, unfortunately the developing world is not ready for that. Not India, not in Pakistan, and every other country. Following the pandemic, there's a huge, the economic recession is going on here in our countries, where our economy, our resource, especially our liquidation is, being compromised. So I personally believe climate change has been affected. Climate change, the phenomenon of climate change has contributed to the plights and ordeals of people who have been living in developing world, where they have got the corrupt regimes, corrupt government, and the aristocracy, oligarchy, dictatorship, despotism, and we're not the poster by a Western democracy. We have been we have been seeing this hybrid regime being installed in Pakistan. So I personally believe, and people don't understand this thing, especially, these religious clerics, they have like once Catholicism and, Catholic churches, monasteries and cathedrals used to do. And our own, the Mullaism, the Maulvis, and we call them. So they have been manipulating the whole scenario, because they are telling people everywhere, in India and Pakistan, oh, it's a God wrath, it's just because of our sins. So whatever has been happening just because of us. So that's the way they are just making people, it's quite unfortunate thing whenever I come across this thing, that whenever I find, I used to work, I've been part of media fraternity for quite some time, and when I got to got a chance to meet people who were hit by the worst floods back in 2010, and they said, no, it's just from the God, we might have done something wrong, so we had to suffer. So I personally believe government has been using this tactic to just make people, convinced, and government has been shaping a narrative with their self-serving and convenient rationalization. So people, I didn't see people coming out for protest that there should be environmental governance while we have been living in urban centers for many years. And I think Telly and my other fellow, they find it quite shocking that we have just quite a couple of months ago, we banned, shopping bag, plastic bags. People were not ready because they didn't think that it could bring any change. So yeah, it's a long way to go. Yeah, but
Yeah.
we have come a long way, I hope. Yeah, it depends how the government, civil society, it's the collective responsibility at every end. Yeah.
Tell you one of the best thing which is raised by the Dr. Osman Shah, this they consider that this is a mental issue as well. The people are not ready, trying to left the shopping bags as well. They are the main reason for the pollutions. So if we talk about the the concept of the mind are related to the climate change, like the peoples or the normal peoples who are not working in the different organization like you, me, and Dr. Usman Shahid will be not about the contributed about the climate change and trying to eradicate them. So how can you be explain it in a simple term, in a simple way, in a simple wording, how we can explain to the local peoples that how the climate change is important for us, for our lives, for our future generations?
That's a very good question. I think the most important thing is to give people truthful, honest information in the understandable language. Because what we see right now, that we see some experts trying to talk about CO2 using terms people don't even understand. And what else we see? We see that for 40 years, how much resources we've been wasting on these talks, conferences, on this even Glasgow, but nothing is changing. The climate is only getting worse. The CO2 emissions getting worse. The pollution's getting worse. As only last year, it cost us $650 billion that were taken out of our pockets, the taxpayers, including your country and every other country in the world, and wasted on CO2 carbon emissions fights with no results. We see the results just getting worse. So first of all, where are our money going? We want to know the truth. What's happening with our money? And then we have to actually get the truthful information about the solutions that are being offered to us. Because today, as Ivan mentioned, we live in a profit-driven society. So in the first place is profit. And when anything is being offered to us, like, for example, let's replace all coal stations with wind turbines or with solar panels. Let's cover half of the Spain with solar panels to produce enough energy. Well, do we calculate how much fossil fuels are being used to create the turbines? How much lubricants that are being made from fossil fuels are used daily to maintain those turbines? And what was the most shocking thing for me that I found out from the conference, where there was a clip that the plastic blades on the wind turbines are made from highly toxic materials, usually being buried right in the same landfill afterwards. Nobody's recycling them because they're huge. Transportation and recycling would cost a lot of money. And this is just a hypocrisy that we have to do solutions that are very profitable for someone. They are only, this kind of green solutions, only green for someone's pockets, for the pockets of those people who produce these solutions, but they are not solving the problem. So we have to actually take a truthful look. What's going on with the solar panels? What's going on with them after that? How much cobalt do we need for batteries to store the energy that's coming from solar panels, and how much damage to ecology that does? And if we look truthfully at it, we see that nothing we do right now is even close to working. So we have to be honest. First of all, we have to take an honest look. And when it comes to cultural issue, it's a very important topic that Mr. Usman said. He said that religious leaders are saying to people that it's just a punishment from God and that people shouldn't be responsible for it. And this is those people, they don't know their own culture, they don't know their own religion, because Prophet Muhammad himself, peace be upon him, was developing science. He was putting the best efforts into developing science. How many technical solutions came from the Islam? Even the lenses that we use on our cameras were developed in Islam. And just thanks to Islam culture, we have these solutions that allow us to connect around the world. So we have to respect the core of each of our culture, including the core of Islam, which is technical development, which is development of technical solutions, and taking responsibility. We have to take responsibility on ourselves and take actions, first of all, in uniting people on universal basis. Because today we live in a space where none of us can do anything separately. One by one, we can do nothing. But if we unite as a humanity, I'm not saying wait for politicians to unite. I'm saying us as people, join online like this, discuss this, and talk to our neighbors, share it on our social media, let them know that there are conferences that cover it truthfully. And by the way, at the conference, one of the opening speakers was Imam of the oldest church of the oldest mosque in Germany, Amir Aziz, and originally he's from Pakistan, and he said beautiful words that we have to actually unite as people and build a society worldwide which puts human life first, not the money, not someone's greedy needs for profit for money, but human life. And if we take the climate issue from the human life perspective, then we're not going to use the solutions which going to decrease the level of protection for people in developing countries. Because very good point by Mr. Usman as well. If we replace everything with green energy, and what people going to do who have no energy even today, who have no food, how they go and survive? Nobody cares about it. Nobody talks about it right now. But if we put human life first, then it's a different thing. We're not going to use solutions that hurt people, that make them less protected, that reduce their level of protection. And when it comes to climate change, the first thing we need is energy. So again, coming to the core of Islam culture, development of new technical solutions, new sources of energy, not from fossil fuels and not from hypocrisy that comes from wind turbines and solar energy, but actually develop the new sources of clean energy is something that we can solve only united as a human civilization. There is no separate country that can do it. And this is the aspiring goal. This is the goal that really can make us move forward. But for that, we need human scientific potential of all our civilization.
Okay.
And this is what creative society is about. Thank you.
Okay. Ivan, there is a lot of the things which is mentioned by the Tally right now. So you are talking about the geological aspects as well earlier, about the mention of one of the geological aspects that the country, the climate is how affected over there, and the soil of the states as well. So please highlight it, the geological aspect, which is you mentioned earlier, and if you want to add something, the question with the Tally over there, so you have an upload, please.
Yes, what I was stressing out really is the change that our planet which our planet undergoes, which we all live on, regardless of culture, territory, or wealth, is threatening all of us equally, because there is a shift in Earth's core, and there is a shift in Earth's mantle, which is trying to escape from underground. And let me give you an example. I just spoke with a geologist who was in an oil research company who was drilling the oil well, and he noticed that the permafrost up in the northern, like Yamal or northern Russia, used to be 700 meters tall. Like when they go through, they see that 700 meters of permafrost. Recently, they've seen that the permafrost shrinked 200 meters. It left only 500 of the permafrost. 200 meters is taller than any building you can imagine. It's a huge amount, and what what it threats us with, and one of the things he gave us an example of an accident which they had. In order to drill in hard rock, they use explosives. So you drill a little shaft, you put an explosive, it blows up, and then you can drill again, so it doesn't break the drill. So what they've seen recently developing is when they drill this shaft, because of the all of the activity underground, there is lots of gas coming up, and there is lots of heat coming up, lots of energy building up. So on one of the developing missions which they had, when they exploded the explosives, the explosion got magnified, but all of those gases underneath, and the explosion was so huge that it killed an entire crew. And they had to stop the drilling for 6 years because so much damage was done. The amount of energy released was close to a nuclear bomb. And then they had the stream of boiling water, not just warm, boiling, 100 degrees Celsius water, streaming up into the sky, 60-meter high stream of water boiling. Imagine what's gonna happen when all of that water is gonna get released into Siberia or any other anywhere else for that matter. What's gonna happen to those who live in there, and what's gonna happen to how much earthquake shaking we're gonna have, how much damage is gonna be done. So, and I'll tell you one more thing. It's a scientific fact. There is much more water underground than there is on the surface. So the ocean underground is few hundred times bigger than the one is on the surface, and it's boiling hot water. When it's gonna go up, it's not gonna be pretty. It's gonna be enough water to cover the entire planet, and it's gonna be boiling water. So we have to address these issues. We have to research it much deeper, and we have to find solutions now. And you see, the entire problem, it's not that there is no technology, it's not that we don't have potential or resources. We do. The problem is that we spend all those resources in order to fight whose king is better, whose border is going to have the higher wall, which nation is prettier than the other. It's silly. It's really kindergarten stuff. And instead, don't we have much more pressing things to deal with at the moment, rather than play politics, which is not a real problem at all. It's about who is cooler and who's supposed to be sitting on top of who. It's really, it's mind-numbing how stupid it is. It's really, I can't even explain what do I feel about it. I really don't care which country you come from. You're a human being. You're my brother. I want to help you, and I want you to be able to respond in the same way. Instead, we are in another arms race, and we're trying to kill each other. We're gonna kill each other before anything happens.
Okay, very good things which is raised by you, Evans, really. Dr. Osman Shahid, as earlier, the tally had mentioned many things related to the, they said it that, he said it that we pay the taxes, we pay a lot of the money to stop the climate change, to eradicate the climate change over there, to stop the pollution. But still, we are, when the result comes out, we are on a zero pace. We think that we are like a punching bag. You are related to the Department of Higher and Politics. You have a depth study over there. You think that our leaders are doing politics on a climate change?
No, I don't think so. They haven't been doing enough. And I must say, we know that our emperors are naked, as Greta Thunberg had rightly said. So I don't think so. Sanity at any end, if we see, the Bolsonaro, I'd like to mention his name, that the way he has been, wiping out the Amazon forest, which are called the lungs of the earth, just because of the development. And he has got that argument, the stuff I have been talking, earlier, that, it's a development, the people need their unemployed population, they need, development at home. So it's not their business. And he's a populist leader. He's a great, he doesn't believe in climate change, a big denial of climate change. So I think it's not the politicians, we need to listen to our poets. The civilization will perish if we don't listen to our poets, but politicians. So I think it's high time for, the all sections of the society, they have to play their rightful role, be it, our mosques, and, unfortunately, as Telly has, I am so, I'm so elated to have listened what, he had just about, Islam and the great, rich history of Muslims. But unfortunately, now the Muslim society, we have been, yeah. I was talking about the role of media, who can play their rightful role, in this regard. Unfortunately, the media in developing countries, especially in South Asia, they seem to be quite oblivious towards this climate change thing. And as far as the Western media is concerned, I must say, and I just like to appreciate Guardian, BBC. They have made their, the whole sections, and they are environmental journalists. They have been working there. But in our country, I am afraid the journalists, they don't have such, training centers. They're not concerned about this kind of thing, and our newspapers, they're not paying much heed to this phenomena. So I hope the media, uh, somewhere down the line, they understand that they have got they have got the voice, and they could easily spread the word, for that matter. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay. At last, we have a question for all of you, that how much trouble are we in nowadays in the current situation? Kelly, you have floor.
Well, it's a question of surviving of our civilization. And if we see what was happening 5 years ago, for example, and how much more we have natural disasters each year in each country, including the United States, and we see that there is no exception here. The developed countries are suffering just as much. The whole villages have been destroyed in December, like small cities in Kansas, in Kentucky, by tornadoes, 36 tornadoes in one day. And the destruction from those events and from floodings in the south of USA, you can compare them to war, because when you see the aerial footage and you see the whole houses destroyed, not a single house survived. So there is no literally a difference between the bomb that's dropped from the airplane and destroys a house and the climate change that doing exactly the same thing. And people are dying all over the world because of this issue. And it's just picking up. We see year by year, the destruction becomes bigger. And here is the question, we cannot survive if we don't unite. And we cannot unite on economical issues. We cannot unite on political issues. We cannot unite on anything else except value of human life. And this is what is the solution: to start talking to people, create events, not wait for the politicians to start unite, and they never will. So as religious leaders, but the people can start this movement and unite on universal values: value of a human life, safety of human life, and protection of human benefits. That everyone's life should be protected as oneself, each one's. And then we do not care where is this person coming from. Then we don't care what's his religion. We know it's a human being just like myself. And what is the beauty of the project I'm taking part in, the Creative Society, that it was created by asking people from all over the world what kind of society you would like to live in. And people were answering the same thing, doesn't matter which country they're from. They want to live in a safe society, peaceful society, where everyone is respected. And this is what unites people. This is why we have to be honest and address, thanks to technologies, we have this way of communication and talking to everyone. And I would like to encourage everyone who hears this conversation to go on creativesociety.com and check the 8 foundations of the Creative Society. See how these universal values can unite, and talk about them to your friends. Post it on your social media. Watch the conference, Global Crisis, Time for the Truth, to see what is happening around you, what is happening in neighborhood countries, what is happening around the world. And you will see that there are no strangers in today's world. We all are one big human family, and we have to start taking care of each other as family members. Then it will be not a problem, not a climate change, not anything else. If we unite, we can solve any issues and provide prosperous life, not only for 8 billion people, but for 25 billion people on this planet. Thank you.
Dr. Suman Shahid.
Yeah, definitely. I'll totally endorse what's just been said. It's high time to just make concerted effort to join the chorus, because this common challenge could bring us together. And I definitely, believe that, the politicians, we shouldn't be relying on politicians and, the profit making, the petrochemical corporations. The door is closing. and we know, our posterity, the generations to come, will definitely suffer. And we have got only one home, and and we will be ex, uh, extinct, like the species who didn't adopt themselves and who were not agile. So I think it's high time we need to understand, and take this robust and rigorous action to just cut the emission, and just create a buzz, and just force our political authorities to just change the course of the history. Otherwise, definitely whatever we have been seeing around, glacier melting in Himalayas, glacier melting, rising level of seas in Maldives, and the floods they have been hitting. It's become a new normal in Bangladesh, and in Pakistan, which wiped out more than 80,000 people just in 24 seconds. So I personally believe, no, it's in our hand. We cannot rely on politicians, to the religious leader. Only civil society and media, they could create a buzz, and they could disseminate.
Okay, Ivan, you have the floor.
It's just you froze on my screen. I'm not sure if it's your connection. Oh, thank you. The whole I'm 100% behind you guys, and I liked what Tali said, and I think changing the ways of our society is the key, because the problem right now is much more social rather than anything else. It's not economical or political or anything else. It's just what's inside our heads, and we're so used to passing on our own responsibility as a human being onto politicians who don't know us and who don't care about us. So we have to stop relying on somebody doing our own work and take things into our own hands. And I mean, it has to be in every facet of the way. Research, finding the right people, letting everybody know what is going on, gathering our resources together. And creative society is a very good example. You can see how people without financial support or anything else just gathered, and they did a lot. We have a TV studio almost in every country of the world, and it's done by volunteers. It's not like nobody is paying for us. The materials which we're gathering, the conferences which we can make are enormous, and the technical support is enormous. United Nations cannot afford what we already can do, and that's done without banks, without waiting for political help or anything else. It's just our own actions. When there is a lot of us, there is a lot. When we have a goal in front of us, and we are not passing on the responsibility of achieving this goal, there is nothing that we cannot accomplish. Like, and I can vouch for that. Then we have developed already a media platform, independent media platform, which is sharing the truth around the world, and it's growing and it's getting stronger by the minute. Actually, we are on every social media platform which is possible, which is there only. As soon as a new social network comes out, we are on it right away. We are in the midst of developing new scientific program, which we invite all the scientists which have open mind and will to share the knowledge with the people, and we're giving them as much support as we can. Another thing is, when we're talking about abundant society, we mean that everybody supposed to have a free education and free medical care and everything else. The free education part is what we are doing right now. I already spoke to hundreds of the best scientists of the world, and they opened and they shared the information freely. So for me, it was a free education. I probably attended 2 or 3 universities by now, but by the time I was interviewing them and giving them questions. So whenever I have a question, I don't think what it might be, I don't guess. I just find the best scientist that knows anything about it, and he gladly answers to me. So we can do anything. It's just don't make anybody tell you otherwise, or your laziness to stop you. Just let's go at it and achieve it. And we're unstoppable. Let's do it, people.
Okay, thank you very much to all of you for joining today's session, because you highlighted and really highlighted the each and every aspect of the climate change over there. There's a lot of learning and knowledgeable people like you, for me, for my audience as well. So thank you very much, Charlie, Dr. Usman, and Yvonne. So you and me met in the next program with another topic. So take care, all of you. Thank you very much.